Welcome to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson and I ask my guests one simple question. Why? Focusing on the importance of why, I share with you the relatable, uplifting and inspiring conversations I have with people from all walks of life. This podcast will encourage you to focus on your why to enable and empower you to achieve the success you desire. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we get started, are you thinking of creating a podcast or are you a podcast host already? As a podcast strategist, I can help you to launch or relaunch a purposeful and profitable podcast, which will inspire, entertain, and educate a global audience. Simply book in a one-to-one call with me right now via the Calendly link in the show notes, and together we'll focus on the purpose of your podcast. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Danny Matthews. Hi, Danny. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm excited about this.
Well, we have a thank you, don't we? We have a thank you to Marcus Dimbleby. In fact, you're the second guest that Marcus has asked onto the show or invited onto the show, recommended to me. And I'm really looking forward to exploring your why today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's a pleasure. So first question, what is it you're doing at the moment, Danny?
What am I doing at the moment? Wow. I have two main focuses at the minute. One of them is on the business and one of them is on, I guess, my why or my purpose. The one about the business is I'm really trying to, whenever someone asks, what's the goal here? What's the goal with the business? The only thing I can ever think of is I just want to make sure that I can do this again tomorrow. So I've been working really hard over the last year to try and put things in the business like automation and take away some admin tasks and really make it lean. And I'm really fortunate now that I'm at the stage where I can focus on things like doing podcast interviews and speaking engagements and, really focusing on key clients and that kind of thing, because a lot of the monotonous day-to-day admin that I don't want to do is taken care of. So a lot of my role in the business is half public-facing stuff and half design, which is all I want to do. So I just need to make sure I can keep doing this every day. The other thing that I'm working on is, which I'm sure we'll find out during this episode, but I'm helping young people in colleges and universities, not just with business aspects, but to bridge that gap between employment and education, especially in this area where I am. It's really bizarre. We've got really affluent areas and then the complete opposite in the same area, but a lot of it is hidden. So you don't really get to see it. So I go into local universities and colleges and give talks, and I'm part of venture builder programs and things where I offer free guest lectures, I guess you could call them, where I talk about branding and design and how it affects how it can be used in not only business and to start a business, but also to create change and save the world, let's say. So they're the things I'm working on right now.
So saving the world, it sounds like a superhero there.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's I don't know. We've been fed this idea of what a superhero looks like, and I think a lot of us have the power to do quite a lot with very little effort. And it's all that mindset of like one more person, one more thing, one more idea. We don't need to do big elaborate things to make big change and to put our ideas into the world, just one at a time, little by little, inch by inch, millimeter by millimeter. So I try to keep that kind of philosophy or that mentality.
It's a great philosophy to have. So what's the just one more that you will be doing next?
It will be the young people. It'll be one more young person, one more business owner, one more idea. I love, that's kind of why I love working with a lot of startups, because they're such seedling ideas that you can almost pull and shape and mold and question and challenge. And they become something that probably the founder didn't know it was going to look like that in the beginning. And that's what's so great about working with young people as well as startups. They're in the same kind of stage very, very early on.
So you started by saying that you've got two main focuses, and one is the business and one is the why and the purpose. Are they not entwined?
Yeah, they are. They are. So as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a designer, a graphic designer. I wanted to, draw cartoons all day and make funny voices and, all that kind of stuff. Real childlike behavior. But uh, unfortunately, for want of a better phrase, I went to an all boys school, public school, which ended up being a sports college. And what happens in sports colleges is you're either a rugby player or a football player. There's no real career path for like an artist or a creative or a designer. So it was never really encouraged or supported, even though I loved it. If you can imagine, my mum ended up taking the carpet up in my bedroom because it was too hard to clean it from all the lead and the paint and the stuff and the charcoal. So she just said, "I'm pulling it up. You can have floorboards." Yeah, and just stacks of books in the corner from sketching. I remembered over the weekend that a song came on. There was some like really old 90s hip hop on the radio, and there was an old Jay-Z track. And I said to my wife, "Do you know, I've just remembered I did a big sketch of Jay-Z's face when I was younger, and and it's the first time I remembered it in a while." So that was a childhood thing, and because there was no encouragement, I just went and got a job like most people do, and that led me down a path of getting into commerce and an industry, if you like, and then I had to fight to get back out, but it was the best thing that I ever did.
The fight to get in or the fight to get out?
Fight to get back out. Getting in was easy. Getting into, getting a job and getting into an industry and, getting promoted and getting money and picking up contracts and that kind of thing. That was the easy bit. Fighting to be able to be a creative in a world that doesn't value creative, which is an interesting topic on its own. It's really tough. It's really tough.
So clearly you were exploring all these different opportunities to be creative as a young child, but at home, not at school. And it wasn't discouraged at home. It was encouraged because obviously the carpet came up and it's like, knock yourself out, make a mess. That's fine. Mm-hmm. You just said that the world doesn't encourage or value creative work. Is that the case?
To some extent, yeah. It is changing and slowly. But quite impactful, or in an impactful way. We're seeing designers on boards now, because people are starting to realize that there's nothing without creativity or without creating or without the visual aspect of marketing or design or brand or whatever it might be. But it hasn't always been that way. Design, especially graphic design, has always been seen as a bit of a commodity. Like, we're the business heads and we tell you what to do and you just go and create something. There's a great meme out there in the design world, and it just says, I'm a designer, not an effing screwdriver. We're not just here to carry out your tasks, we've got something really valuable to add. So yeah, it's not completely the case. It is changing, but it has been viewed as quite a commodity over the years, which has been very hard for designers to put their foot down and step forward and say, actually, I have something else to add. And I very often find myself telling people that design might be my skill, but it's not where the value lies. And it's not until you really get to know what our thought process is and how some of us go about things from our experience that we can really add value to a business.
So where does your value lie if it's not in your skill?
It is in the experiences and depending on who you are, your experience of your life and in work and whatever that might be. So it's, a lot of designers come straight from education and they go through college or university and then they leave a little bit lost and in the dark as to what to do next. Should I join an agency? Should I join a company? If you join a company, then it's really hard to, you're basically stuck with one brand and you do the same thing over and over. If you go to an agency, it's a little bit cutthroat and there's other people involved and, you get to work with big clients, but probably only a very small portion of the work. Or do I go freelance? There's so many questions for them. Whereas me, I always wanted to do it, but I spent 10 years growing and running a financial service business, which meant I had to communicate with clients, I had to communicate with suppliers, with regulators. That, there's a lot involved in running a financial services business. And I think when I finally ended up in the design business, I realized that design isn't just how something, that old Steve Jobs quote, it's not how something looks, it's how something works. And I started to figure out what the problems were of businesses and how they could be solved, and realized that a lot of the solutions came back to branding, or how I see branding anyway, and design. And so that was it. That was the journey, and that's kind of what led me here, I guess.
And if you had your time again, would you change any of the paths that you took?
A really tough question. When and this is actually, it's very tough for me to talk to young people about this, especially. For me to the transition I made from industry or business or my financial services business to design took a lot of heartache, a lot of work, and ended up I had an episode of burnout, which basically I lost the feeling from the waist down in central London, and literally strangers were dragging me off the floor. I had that was it. I was done. My body was saying, "You can't go any further. This is dangerous." So it's really hard for me to have the conversation with young people to say if I would change it or not, because even though I hope that no one has to go through what I went through, it was the catalyst for me becoming really happy and really doing what I love, and being in the position I am now. So it's a hard question for me to answer, because that is a real conflict. I had to do it for me in order to get to that stage, but can you get there without that pain and that suffering? I don't know. I hope you can, and that's why I talk a lot with young people in universities and colleges, because I want to try and figure that out for them, or with them, if you like. So yeah, tough question. Hopefully that answered it okay.
Do you think it means more for you to now be pursuing this work than if you had, I guess, gone straight into it the first time? You wouldn't have known how much pain there'd been, for sure. But what I'm trying to work out is, when you're talking to the young children, or young people rather, about this experience, that there's a contrast for you. It's like a black and white, night and day scenario. And a lot of people who come on the show talk about their darkest moments being the catalyst for their purpose. Mm-hmm. And as you say, you'd hope that you'd be able to reach that without seeing it. But I guess it makes it sweeter.
It does. And it does add an extra layer of I guess, respect in some sense. I wish, someone, I worked with a homeopathist. I'm so glad I got that out of my mouth correct then. And when I was talking to them about how it works, one of the ways that they described it to me is that your body, when you're ill and your body has infection or virus or whatever it is, your body has to come to a natural high temperature in order to kill the virus or the bugs that are in you. And homeopathy is designed to safely bring you to that temperature to kill the virus without killing you, basically, in a roundabout way. And I almost, I like that as an analogy with what I hope can happen with young people or other people that are trying to find their purpose or find their why. I hope that I can be, and all of us can be, by telling our stories and sharing our experiences. I hope that young people can get to the point where they feel just enough pain to respect and be grateful for what they have in front of them without causing damage for the long term. I hope that's what I can do, and that we can all do for the young people of today. And I think that's probably a good analogy for it.
And how do you articulate your purpose, Danny? How do you describe it?
I describe it simply as bridging the gap between education and employment, and giving support and encouragement to the people that I never had, to the young people of today, so we can have a better tomorrow. I simply put it as advancing humanity through creativity. And that's really important for me. It took me a long time to get to that language or that phrasing. And it's very broad, but it's very broad for a reason. I think everything that we smell, touch, taste, feel, it all happens outside of the natural world. It all happens because people sat around a table in a room and discussed the possibilities and found a way to solve a problem. And that to me is creativity alive. That's how it works. It has to have, people challenging, people testing, people looking at different ways to solve problems. And everything in the world is created that way. So I think if I can influence someone to use that, to use their creativity, to come up with an idea and then put it into action to solve a simple or really big problem, we get one step closer to making the world a better place when we're gone, I guess. So yeah, that's where it comes
And that living legacy looks like what?
from. This might be a long one. There's lots of things that I would like to do in this world. And it's funny, it's almost, I liken it to getting a tattoo. When you get one and you see it on your skin and it's there forever, you kind of want another one. And I'm so grateful that this is my business because I get to make the decision to go and do something. If someone has an idea that will, I don't know, solve climate change in their own little way, or whether it's just to make their family happier or to make another family happier on the other side of the world. Once I'm finished with one, I can't help but want to go and find another one, and have that other little go at solving the problem, at saving the world, let's say. So I'm really grateful that that's my business and that's how it shows up in the long term, just one after the other, and one bit at a time. There was a stage where I thought, I need to go and save all the big problems. I need to change, politics and religion and, these things. But I realized actually for Jane down the road, who wants to change her family's life because her child was born with a specific illness and she wants to affect that on other people or change the way that they live through mobility, accessibility, those things, to help her create the right message to get through to the right people so she can change something is amazing. That's just as good as taking plastic out of the oceans or solving climate change. So yeah, I realized at one stage that one step at a time, one person at a time, it can be done. And I probably had big ideas that needed little little changes along the way. Yeah, that's how it shows up.
Amazing. And what I'm hearing here is you're saying about the problem solving, and that is creative. And a lot of people sort of park it as being a more different type of skill, but actually opening up creativity in so many different ways. You're not just talking about being an artist here. You're just talking about unlocking elements of your working your brain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not really, when I say creative, I think people automatically think design or something visual, but creative is the brain power behind everything that happens. It's not about the output, it's about the input and expanding the middle, if you like. So when we think about a problem, creativity has to happen before it's solved. It's our way of thinking, it's our way of challenging to come up with the solution. The solution doesn't have to be visual, the output doesn't have to be visual, but boy, does it help.
And what I also love, I love your strap line. And yes, it is broad, but it is powerful. The advancing humanity through creativity. When you say advancing to what? What is there an ideal that you have an image of?
It's the old kind of adage. I've heard it before that people say just to leave the earth a better place than you found it. And I think that's probably, it used to be quite like nice. It used to be quite a nice thing to say. But now we're in this climate emergency. Now we're seeing wars and pandemics and things all happening at the same time. I can't help but think that is much, much more prevalent now than it ever has been. So advancing is purely a generational thing. I can leave this world a better place than I found it. My child can, their children can. So hopefully it's something that I can leave to the world that they can get inspired from and go and advance humanity through their own creativity in their own way. So I'm hoping that it's not just my thing, my purpose, or my phrasing, but it's something that someone else can say, actually, yeah, that's what I want to do as well. Because I think we all kind of do it, don't we? When we see someone that we look up to and they've said something or they've had a quote or something that, we carry it around with us. I always, I've already said Steve Jobs once on this podcast episode. I'm going to say his name again. But he said something once, which was, the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And I think about that all the time, because I think there is an element of crazy that you need to do big things. Yeah, but it's the brave and the crazy ones and those people that take these things and move them forward to a next generation. So I think that's important.
And was it always on your mind that you were looking for your purpose, or was it something that has evolved as you've got clarity in your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the latter. I think I never used to think about it, really. It was only I don't think we are interested in discovering our purpose unless it's triggered, usually by an event. That doesn't have to be our own personal event like mine. It can be, seeing a lot of war around us, for example. I imagine that a lot of people in Ukraine at the minute are trying to find they're currently trying to find their way out of this situation, but the people around them, so the neighboring countries, maybe, I have the sneaky suspicion that they're all currently trying to find meaning in what they're doing here on this earth. Because while there's so much horrid war and destruction, we look for that North Star and that shining light. And I think that's what happened to me. I got to the point where I just thought, what's the point anymore? And needed to find what that was. And I discovered it in my childhood passions and my childhood interests that I had kind of latched onto, actually, throughout the years between school and when I started the design studio. It wasn't nothingness, it was me trying to reach out and grab things, even down to I went to start an eco-friendly print and design business through the Prince's Trust when I was about 17 or 18. And then I started a tattoo shop, and I was a tattoo artist for a number of years, which was kind of a nice burst of creativity. And then even in jobs, like simple administration jobs, I'd always the person to say, that letterhead doesn't quite look right. Do you mind if I redo it, or change it, or redo the logo? And I was always the one to put my hand up for that stuff. So it wasn't like it was completely alien. I knew it was there, and I was always trying to reach out and grab it from somewhere. But it was only when the bad stuff happened that I really thought, this is it now. It was a nothing to lose moment, really. There was a lot going on at the time, and it was my wife, actually, that was the first person to give me a little bit of encouragement to say, you might as well do it. There's nothing to lose. Go for it. And that was kind of the trigger.
So nothing to lose, but the flip side was everything to gain.
Yeah, I felt like everything to gain. To give you some context, we were between moving. So we moved from Birmingham down to the Cotswolds 12 years ago for my work at the time in insurance and financial services. And then when my father-in-law got diagnosed with cancer, we went and lived with him for about 6 months. And when he started to recover, we moved back down. At the same time, we were trying to have our first child through IVF treatment, and we had failed our second go, and that was quite an emotional time. So that, as well as me traveling to London, the majority of the week, 4 a.m. till midnight, usually, we're just burning the midnight oil and just working too much without any purpose apart from, this is going to pay me a ton of money and going to give me a nice house in London, and all that kind of stuff. So it was that, really. It was the one thing after another, the layer on top of layer. that really killed it. Mm.
So what about the fulfillment piece? How does that fit in right now?
I'm very fulfilled in my career. There's a funny thing that happens when you find your purpose. All of the focus becomes on everyone else. It's almost like the old aeroplane mask analogy. Put your mask on first, and then you can help everyone else. When you find your purpose, your mask is on. There's no, there's nothing. There's no. I've got nothing else to go get. There's no like end goal. There's no target revenue. There's no, no. None of that. So the focus becomes on how you can make change, or how you can influence other people, or how you can live that purpose every day, if you like. And it's funny, fulfillment, I think people get happiness confused with fulfillment, because I can be happy drinking coffee, right? I can be happy drinking coffee. When that coffee's gone, am I now unhappy? Maybe not. But in order for me to carry on being happy, I have to keep going to make a coffee. That kind of thing. So we say, I'm happy, like it's a destination, like we're trying to find it, and when we find it, we'll be happy forever. And that's not true. Happiness is a state that we flow in and out of, and we just have to make sure that we do things that keep us in that state, or as much as possible. That's not going to happen all the time, because things happen in our lives, and it's not all straightforward. But the things that we can do to make ourselves happy are controllable. Fulfillment, on the other hand, fulfillment is a constant, which means when you find fulfillment, it is something that is always there. It's always underlying. It's always a constant. And it's very, very difficult to dip out of a fulfilled state, because of that reason. So fulfillment for me is in my career. I'm finally doing what I really love doing. And as I said at the start, and I've slowly found a way to get rid of the stuff I don't want to do, which feels good. So I am fulfilled, and my cup is full, my mask is on, and my mission is to now help other people do the same through causes they care about, or missions they want to follow. And I'll keep drinking coffee along the way to keep me happy.
And when you're speaking to young people, do they understand that? Is this a concept that can be understood?
To an extent, I think but I do think it's still a high level concept unless they've experienced something. So I try to tell them stories of my childhood, and about that things weren't okay and things weren't easy, and there's always things that happen, because I think it's the only way to connect to them on their level, their age, their situation. So when I tell people that I grew up in an abusive household, with a guy, and I was never abused, but I grew up in a household with a guy that was abusive, um, and ended up almost homeless if my friend's parents didn't take me in at 13, 14. Some people in the room of these young people might be going through that. So I hope that by connecting with them in that way, they can see, hang on a minute, you're sitting in front of me, happy, fulfilled, doing these things, and you came from that. So it's a realistic, I make it a realistic concept for them. But I think without that connection, it's really hard for them to grasp what that feels like, or how that affects your life in a long-term way, in a 30, 40, 50, 60 year kind of way. So it is a difficult message to get across, but I hope by connecting it to personal experiences, things that they may be going through, it can touch home a little bit easier. That was a really good question, though, Amy.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we've talked about the pain and the pleasure. You talked about how you have to almost experience something that's so painful that you then connect with the purpose. And yet you went back to those childhood passions and hobbies. And it is so often the case. And yet when you talk to people and they say, oh no, well, I can't make a career out of that. And especially for young people going through, you're encouraged to go into professions, into careers. And, all they want to do is, as you wanted to do, is just draw, and design and make silly noises or whatever you need to do. You just want to be that child. And I do feel that, as you say, the world is evolving and allowing that to happen. If we're looking at all the short form video that we've got out there, the different availability of TikTok, for example, is a great format that people are really enjoying and making good money out of it.
Yeah, I can't help but tell everyone that, like, when I'm trying to give people a reality check, I tell them about Ryan from Ryan's World. If you've got kids, you know who he is. This is a kid whose parents gave him some toys, told them to open them on camera and put the video on YouTube. And he very, very quickly was making $23 million a year opening toys on a TV show that wasn't on TV. That blows my mind. And when people say, I don't know what to do, I'm kind of lost. I'm like, well, you're not lost. You just haven't tried anything yet. Like, what do you want to do? And a lot of them will say something that feels out of reach. Skateboarding, art. I'm meeting a girl today who's 19, and she's been running for the last year a horse brow band making company. She's already made thousands. And now she's like just stepping up, getting to the next level with her brand and a website and stuff. And I'm really interested to talk to her about why where she gets this belief from that it could be a business, because it's such a simple niche, handmade thing. Where does she get this almost naive belief that this is going to work? Because she's so ambitious. So yeah, whenever I see young people and they say, oh, I want to be a skateboarder or whatever, and they can't see that, it's not in reach. And I try to tell them, there's a kid called Ryan, and I tell them the story. I often tell people that I would do all of this for free. I've just found a really nifty way to trick people into paying me for it. And I say that jokingly, but there is some truth to it. So yeah, it's quite a funny thing when someone says, I can't be a skateboarder or whatever. Of course you can. You can find a way to do it. You can find a way to make money doing what you love. Some of it you might not really love, but it's still you're still in the skateboarding world. I know a guy who he owns a skateboarding clothing shop. He can't skateboard because he's got an illness. So he's found a way to be in that space without obviously taking care of his injuries and stuff. So there's a way to do it. You have to be, what's the word for it? Yeah, you have to be direct about the thing and flexible about the way, I guess. I've never said this before, so I'm trying to do it on the spot. But I think if you like a category of something, horse riding, skateboarding, whatever it might be, as long as you're open to the possibilities of making that a business from a revenue point of view and making it, I don't know, pay for a lifestyle or, just your family bills, whatever it might be, then it can be done. There is no question about it, because there is endless amounts of people that have gone into industries that seem ridiculous and made a living out of them. I have a client who runs a model scenery, so a model railway scenery making company. They're the only other model railway scenery making company other than Hornby, who have been around for 300 years. And the guy's gone from 40 grand to, I don't know, millions in a couple of years because everyone went hobbyist. That's the most niche thing I've ever heard of, But he's created an incredible business and a great life for him and his family on this silly little thing that he probably thought no one was interested in. And I think we can all find that little thing within what we're interested in to make something big out of.
Yeah, and I think you've really illustrated that point, talking about the young girl with her brow business for the horses. when you go niche and niche again, and you'll find that, as you say, there are very few competitors the more niche you go, and you can always come back out again. You can always, flex and see where the point is. But interestingly, my brother makes models. It's like scratch builds or something out of old hot rod cars, and they have the competitions and things, and he loves it. And it's, he does it because he absolutely loves it. He's done it ever since he was a kid, which was break toys and then build them into other kind of robots or whatever. I mean, it's just, this is a young 40-year-old plus who's having a great life making things out of stuff that he used to do as a kid.
I'm a hot rod guy myself, and there's a guy on our kind of music scene, and he's a carpenter. And one day he said, I'm going to make little mini hot rods for kids out of wood. And they are incredible, like the most beautifully created things you've ever seen in original hot rod form and body. They're just small enough for kids to pedal or run, like Flintstone style. So, he realized he had a skill, carpentry. He had an interest in 1950s, 30s, 40s, and 50s cars. Realized that kids would love that stuff, and just made it. Just made them. They just did there was no expectation of like £1 million revenue or whatever it might be. It was just, I'm going to do the thing I like most in the category I like most, because that's what makes me happy. And I don't think there should be any other decision outside of that.
No, and it comes right down, doesn't it, to the Ikigai concept, which is, yes, fold your mission with your passion, with your profession, and your mission, passion, vocation, and your profession. Yeah, the four of them. And it is, as you say, you found a way to trick people to paying you, which is perfect. But it's like, what does the world need? What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? And what can you be paid for? And that's it. That's what you're sharing here, that the whole Ikigai way of living, which is fabulous. So yeah, Danny, it's been a pleasure exploring why you do what you do. I love this conversation. I really do love my job. Honestly, I get to speak to so many cool people and hear what you're doing, and advancing humanity through creativity is a very cool way to live your life. So brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Tell me, how could people get in contact with you, Danny?
Probably almost anywhere on the internet. I'm known as the actual Danny, because I'm not a Daniel. I was actually born a Danny. So you'll find me at the actual Danny almost everywhere, even on LinkedIn, believe it or not. So LinkedIn is probably the best place to connect with me. If you want to go see what we do, it's dannyand.co. Yeah, they're probably the two best places.
Perfect. Well, they'll go in the show notes. Thank you. So thank you for Marcus for introducing us. Marcus Dimbleby, thank you. Another shout out to Marcus. But thank you, Danny, for sharing all of what you've shared today, bridging the gap between education and employment to helping all those young people. It really is an admirable role that you've taken on. So yeah, looking forward to following your work.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Do you have some final words for the audience, please, Danny?
I hate to take it from someone else's mouth, but just do it. No, it's I'll say the Steve Jobs quote again, because I think it's really important. But the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And you don't have to do it in a big, extravagant way. You can just do it one piece at a time in your own little way. And you'd be surprised at the compound effect of you doing something to inspiring other people to do the same.
How has this conversation had an impact on you? What value have you received from tuning in? What are your reflections with actions? Please take a moment to leave me an Apple Podcast or Spotify review sharing how Focus on Why has made a difference to you today. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. To keep it going, simply connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or Twitter, or join the Focus on Why Facebook group. All the links are in the show notes. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.